Okay, so at the moment, the Attack on Titan theme song is just stuck in my mind, and it's all I can think of, along with The War Host of Vastmark by Johnny Wirtz, as these two series are just consuming my mind at the moment. And there's just a lot of death happening right now between both of these two series. So I just need some positive thoughts. So I thought, why not go through popular series that I don't like and try to talk about the positive aspects of them, and then, in a more polite manner than I normally do, talk about the aspects of them that didn't work for me. Okay, so I didn't really stick to this. I tried staying positive, but I guess I've been tired, been working a lot lately. I got more and more negative throughout these books, and by the time I got to the 10th one, I was ready to go to war against this series. So just a heads up, I tried to stay positive, but for some of these series, I just couldn't. So we can kind of manage your expectations if you're going into those series and you have similar tastes to me. Just having certain expectations in mind can help improve enjoyment of series. There's nothing worse than having a book that's just hyped up to you like crazy and it's just not meeting those expectations that were set. So let's try to manage those expectations, talk about the good, talk about the not so great, and go through these series. Now, I originally was just going to do 5 series. I wrote down my idea for the video. I was going to do 5 popular fantasy series that didn't work for me, but I ended up writing down 8, and 8's a weird number to do. So, of course, as you can see by the thumbnail, I made it 10, and we got to 10 by chucking on 2 fantasy romances onto the end of there. So I'll go through my 8 fantasy series that are popular, didn't quite work for me, or had aspects that I didn't quite like. And then for a bit of fun at the end, I'll talk about Akatar and Fourth Wing, because who doesn't love that content? I'm not going to be following any particular order for things today. I'm just going to be talking about them in order of preference for how I want to talk about them. I'm going to save the books I've read and talked about recently on this channel for later in the video, so we can talk about some things I haven't talked about recently. So we're going to be starting with the Stormlight Archive by Brandon Sanderson, a series I deeply loved when I first started reading it. There's going to be a lot of things throughout this video, a lot of series throughout this video that have books and aspects that I adore, but each of them had something that kind of threw me off in the end. Before we dive into Stormlight though, make sure you like the video, subscribe, and let me know what popular fantasy series didn't work for you that seemed to work for almost everyone else. But with that, let's talk about the Stormlight Archive and maybe a little bit about the Cosmere as a whole. So, Way of Kings. You can see my copy here. It's been well read. The cover's taped back on. I've read this book twice myself. Most of my family's read it as well. This book has been around the world. I adore The Way of Kings. I adore Words of Radiance. I had a good time with Oathbringer. I enjoyed Rhythm of War the second time I read it, and I didn't finish reading Wind and Truth. That's where I dropped off in the series. If you started your reading journey like me and as an adult just picked up YouTube and searched where to start reading fantasy, you'll probably recommended Brandon Sanderson. I started with Mistborn, just the first trilogy, and I was blown away. With Brandon Sanderson, it always comes to the world building. It gets magical. It gets out there. He sets a scene that is just so different from our own world that it's just instant mystical escapism. His plotting's really interesting, where he just lays hints out for us all the way throughout a book, and then he has his iconic Sanderlanches where everything comes together at the end, and you just finish the book with your mind just blown. It's like, wow, how did this happen? And I really enjoyed that for a lot of Sanderson. I had a great time with the entire Mistborn Era 1 trilogy. Way of Kings blew me away. Words of Radiance blew me away even more. That's one of my favorite books of all time. And another thing, the Stormlight Archive, it wasn't just Sanderson's world building and plotting that I loved, it was his characters. And most particularly Kaladin, Shallan, who is one of the main POVs in the Stormlight Archive. She was hard for me to follow. I didn't really enjoy spending much time with her, but because of Kaladin, the Stormlight Archive was quickly becoming just something I thought would be an all-time favorite series for me. But then it got to Oathbringer, and just the drawing things out for the big epic Sanderlanche was starting to lose me. But then the Sanderlanche hit in Oathbringer, and I was like, wow, great ending, awesome, can't wait again. And then he started to lose me in Rhythm of War, where it just felt like every book was getting longer, and he was just drawing things out and just withholding so much of the meat of the story until right at the end where he just hits you with a big epic punch, which leaves you feeling great after the book. But when the book is this long to get there, it still left a bit of sour taste in my mouth. But I still loved all of Kaladin though. Adeline was great, and Dalinar, really good characters, some good side characters of good stories in here. So I continued on with high hopes for the series, going into Wind and Truth. The format changed for Wind and Truth. Instead of being broken up into 5 parts, interludes in the between, it got broken up to 10 parts, a 10-day structure for the build up to an event that was going to happen in 10 days. And the POV structure kind of changed. We started getting in a lot more heads that we hadn't spent as much time in the books. And for me, I found the voices of the characters had changed. Kaladin, who I adored, just no longer sounded like himself. Sanderson's humour, which had thrown me off other series of him, like the Mistborn Era 2, it was showing up more. Or it felt like it was showing up more in Wind of Truth. So I ended up putting that book down because I felt like his writing style had changed and got a bit younger. Which, if you're not a Sanderson fan, you're probably saying any Sanderson reads young, which is fair. But I did find he had some really good hard-hitting lines and just good general writing. 4 books, 1 to 3, even 4 in there too. But Wind of Truth just felt like I was just reading a whole different series of different characters. So that's why I put it down. But huge world building, really good plotting out of things where it just lays things out for just big epic moments at the end. Takes a long time to get there. So there's my issues with the Stormlight Archive. But a lot of people really love it. A lot of people had a great time with Wind and Truth. A lot of people didn't enjoy Wind and Truth. It's a pretty split book where I put out my thoughts upon finishing it, and there was a lot of people agreeing with me. But I've also seen people that had a great time with it and seen a lot of people agreeing with them. So maybe check it out. Cosmere as a whole, I feel like it's just getting too much. Sanderson just keeps putting out more and more books, and it feels like you don't have to read them. Like, you can still enjoy each Sanderson book by itself, but you can kind of get left feeling like, oh, I'm kind of missing out on things. And it's just a bit too much for me. And I feel like the quality of the books just isn't that great. So I've just fallen out with the Cosmere. I don't know if I'll pick up any Brandon Sanderson anytime soon, really. I don't plan on it. Wind and Truth kind of put me off. The other books were already telling me, all right, I'm just going to stick with Stormlight now. This is no more new Sanderson for me. And then Wind and Truth being the disappointment it was for me, it was time to put it down. Now, whilst we're talking about Brandon Sanderson and the Stormlight Archive, we might as well talk about The Wheel of Time. So Robert Jordan's big 14-book epic, massive, huge books as well. I got to book 7 of this series. I got halfway through it, and then I put it down. And it was having similar issues to me as the Stormlight Archive, but I wasn't really enjoying any of the characters, so there's no like Kaladin to pull me back into it. There was a really big epic world. That was very classic, which I enjoyed, and it was fun going through all these different cultures and seeing all these different peoples. We're in a huge epic, like, coming of age story. It very much feels like, as it's described, the clashing of modern and classic fantasy. So that more modern, clean, easy to read writing style, but the classic coming of age, chosen one, prophecy story in a more classic world building setting. It was a fun series. I didn't enjoy book 1 as much. It did kind of feel like that close to Lord of the Rings as it's described as, but it became its own thing in books 2 and 3. We're venturing out and questing through this huge world. We're seeing the new lands, and we're fighting the baddies. And there's always a big epic conclusion. It's where Sanderson probably got his inspiration for his Sanderlanches, where Robert Jordan's slow throughout the book, and it's a big epic ending that leaves you on a huge high, wanting to read that next book. And I just tired of that feeling. And I was getting through book 7, and it was just taking incredibly long amounts of time to get anywhere, where our characters, our cast was broken up all over this world. And we were with one group of like 3 people in this one city, and we went through the day with one of the people in that city. And that was their chapter. There was a lot of reading. And then we go back to the start of the day with another character in that same setting going through. And I found that crawling pacing, and I was just like, I want to skip a chapter. Well, I don't want to skip chapters. That's not how I read books, to just skip through it and see what happens. So I put it down for that reason, that I just was no longer wanting to read the whole book. I was wanting to skip through it, so I put it down. But huge, massive epic. It is easy to read. It's a very easy to read writing style. Very good world building. And I believe, from what I've heard, if you get through the slog, there's some really epic moments for the last about 4 to 5 books of the series. And there's a lot of great moments up and throughout. Big world, big cast, easy to read, a lot to read if you want something just huge and epic. It wasn't for me, but there's so many people out there that adore it, so definitely worth picking up for some people. Then, talking about huge, massive series, let's talk about Realm of the Elderlings by Robin Hobb. This is one I have read a bit more recently. So this one's a 16-book series broken up into 5 smaller series, 4 trilogies, and a 4-book series, like a quartet or something along those lines. I'm not good with all the names of these things. And I got 9 books into the Realm of the Elderlings, plus a novella. I read the first 3 trilogies, Farseer, Live Ship Traders, and The 20 Man, and I adored pretty much 8 of the 9 books. It was only the last third of the last book that really threw me off Realm of the Elderlings, and now I don't know if I'll pick it back up again. But I think this is, of all the book series we're talking about today, I think this is the one I love most and the one I would recommend the most. I recently just got the Farseer trilogy for my sister to read. She had a great time with it. Realm of the Elderlings, for the most part, is just brilliant. It's cozy in its writing style. The way Hobb writes, builds her world, sets the scene, her prose style is very, it just reads so smooth. It's not plain, it's descriptive, it feels rich, but just the wording she used, the way they flow, you just instantly just get immersed into her worlds, and it's a cozy reading experience despite the events being frustrating, being thrilling, being traumatic for some people. It is just, it's just beautifully written. What else can I say? And one critique I see from all the Elderlings a lot that I don't agree with is its pacing. And people say it's too slow. I don't find Realm of the Elderlings to be that slow. I was really invested in pretty much all the characters we got in the Live Ship Traders, and then our main character that we get for the Farseer trilogy and 20 Man Fitz. I'm invested in his story. I'm invested in the Vestrid story and the Live Ship Traders. And because of that investment in their story and in what's going on inside their head and in their mental journey, I'm invested in each page because, well, what are the thoughts that Fitz is going through? What is going on in his head? How's he going to overcome this? And because the outside story, the bigger story and that's going on around in this epic fantasy setting isn't moving through quickly, I didn't find the story was a bit slow because it's Fitz's story. It's Fitz's journey. I was invested in that the whole time. We get really good character exploration in this series. The world building isn't on a crazy scale, but because of the way Hobb describes it to us, because of just the little magical elements she throws in there, it feels magical. It feels whimsical. It feels really big. The politicking can be really fun in this series. I wouldn't say it's the highest point, but there's good politics. There's some good little bits of action and plotting done in this. But it's a character study with a classic fantasy setting and story. And yeah, it's really great. Where I got turned off in this series is book 9, Fool's Fate, the 3rd book in the 20 Man trilogy. We're building to something in this trilogy. We're building to this big event that happens at like the 66% mark in Fool's Fate. And this is a big book. So the next 33% of that book, after we get this big event, is all wrap up. It's all wrapping up Fitz's story. And I found in this wrap up, there was magic that undid consequences in multiple parts where it just felt like we had this big thing happen and our characters have gone through this emotional event and it's just all undone by magic, which is, I find frustrating. The wrapping up portion, just being a whole third of the book, wasn't a fun reading experience, and it just wrapped up in just such unsatisfying manners. It threw me off the series and hasn't left me wanting to pick up any more, though Hobb's writing is just one of my favorites. Like, Hobb's writing style is just one of my all-time favorites. It's cozy to read, it's immersive, it's smooth, her character studies are great, but yeah, I was just annoyed by the book and where it went. So that's me, but it's still something I'd definitely recommend to a lot of people. Then another series I absolutely loved and would still recommend, Dungeon Crawler Carl by Matt Dinnerman. I got to the 6th book of the 7th we have out. I got halfway through it and then put it down. And this one is I had no really good reason for putting it down. I just kind of just got a little tired of it, feeling like we're going on the same thing. So Dungeon Crawler Carl, very popular series at the moment. We're following Carl and his ex-girlfriend's cat Donut as aliens come to the world and decimate most of the population and send a few survivors into an 18-level dungeon that's set up like a video game that is a game show televised over the entire galaxy, universe, space term. And this is made to be funny, but also there's some deeper stuff going on underneath. And this isn't just Carl and Donut going through the levels, they're also trying to fight back against the game show makers. There's politics going on about the people that run the show and the companies around it. And there's a ton of fun, interesting things going on around the game show that add to a bigger story. And I wish that was a bigger part of the story and we got to get through it quicker. I find the format of each book, just Carl and Donut going through each level, going through all the ridiculous scenarios that they're thrown in, it's really fun. And there's lots of great humor that makes it really enjoyable. And they're very easy reads because it's like, all right, here we go. Here's our story. We're making it through the level. Go, go, go. No stop. Good action all the way through. We've got a deeper story building in the background. And I just put it down because I just got a little bit tired of just these books getting longer and longer. And we've just got next level. Okay, we learn about the next level, and then we've got to go through it. And we've got to level up, and we've got to go through like the video game mechanics of it. I just got a bit tired of that, but I'm hoping you guys in the comments give Dungeon Crawler Carl a bit of hype and pull me back into it, because it's a series I want to pick back up. Like, the audiobooks are as fun as they are. I don't think you have to do the audiobooks. A lot of the commentary on Dungeon Crawler Carl I see is you have to read it through the audiobooks because the audiobooks are done so well. Yes, the audiobooks are incredible. Matt Hayes does a fantastic job, but these read really well as well. I've read the first two of these before I'm even hearing about the audiobooks, and the reading experience is great. If you want a fun time, if you want to talk and get, Dungeon Crawler Carl is what you should pick up. I got a little tired of it, but I think I could be convinced to pick this one back up. So we'll see. Then, talking about series I could be convinced to pick back up, we'll talk about The Justice of Kings by Richard Swan, the Empire of the Wolf trilogy. This is just phenomenal in the sense of it has all the right ideas of being something really interesting. It feels like a fresh take on epic fantasy. Like, we're following a King's Justice who is like a detective, judge, executioner, all in one. They go around the lands, like doling out the Empire's law in all the small towns. And we're following this King's Justice through the perspective of his clerk, who's writing this story to us, like from the future. Like, she's really lived out this story and she's recounting it to us, which is one of my favorite storytelling elements. If you couldn't tell, I've got Empire of the Vampire on the wall behind me. I love story where it's already happened and someone's telling us about it. I love Sunny. I don't love Name of the Wind. We'll talk about that soon. But it's a really interesting idea, following like on like a detective story that has horror elements and then getting swept up into a big epic fantasy. All the great ideas, but I just felt it fell flat. And I have a feeling that perhaps the author grows as a writer throughout the series, and books 2 and 3, he brings it all together. But the world building felt very plain and not there. There was good ideas for the world, but it wasn't fleshed out enough. Now, maybe because he wants to write like a thriller and you read it very quickly and it's like a short, very short book, he didn't feel like he had enough time to tell us more about the world or set the scene better. But I feel like he could have set the scene, set the tone, set the world building, and gave us some better imagery. The characters felt very flat to me, very plain. And then in like the big crucial moment, I just feel like there's just plot armor thrown in there and our characters are surviving through something they shouldn't have been able to survive through. So Justice of Kings, great ideas, fell very flat for me, but maybe the author improved as a writer, as a character writer, the ability to set scene in the later books. So if you have read the later books, tell me what your thoughts are. Will I like it more than book 1? I don't know. We'll have to find out. Now, I was trying to save Name of the Wind for a bit later, but I already mentioned it when I was talking about Justice of Kings, so I'll talk about it now. I've talked about Name of the Wind a lot recently, where it has a really interesting story that we just don't get to. The Name of the Wind, super hyped up. Everyone says, "Oh, I wish Patrick Rothfuss would finish this series." Well, I understand why. He just sets up story. He doesn't even get through half of the setup in this story. He tells us on the blurb that our main character has gone and done so many interesting things in his life. And then in the book, at page 50, our main character, he sits down with the chronicler and he tells the chronicler, "I've done all this cool stuff. Let me tell you about it." And he proceeds to tell us about the first 15 years of his life, but he doesn't do any cool stuff. He just goes to school. He does one semi-interesting thing towards the end of the book, but on the whole scope of things, it really doesn't add much to the story. He hints at this bigger story in the background. The reason our main character goes to magic school is to learn about this thing that is teased as the bigger story of the book. We don't get any of that bigger story. Quoth goes to school in this book and he doesn't even graduate. He only gets halfway through his schooling. So it's just a teaser of a book where we just get a kid going through his day-to-day life. Now, I'll try to be some positive. I've done a lot of negative reviews of this on the channel recently, and all my wrap-ups. The writing is good. It reads smooth. There's some good lines. There's some good ways of thinking about certain topics. Because of the good writing, there's some good world building. It feels like you're in this world and you're set in this magical school and you can feel the setting. That's about all the positive things I can say. If the series isn't going to get finished, I wouldn't understand why you'd pick this up, because it's just a teaser at a much bigger story that doesn't get concluded. If it was finished, probably worth picking up. I did not like the main character. I did not like the love interest, who was a glorified sex worker. Let's get to talking about something positive. I can't talk about that any longer. Joe Abercrombie. I love Joe Abercrombie. First Law series, one of my all-time favorite series. His Age of Madness trilogy is maybe the peak of all the fantasy reading I've ever done. It's toe and toe with Empire of the Vampire for me, but the Devils. Fantasy meets Suicide Squad in a alternative Europe setting. We are following the Pope's Suicide Squad, a ragtag bunch of werewolves, vampires, magicians, all-round badasses, and mythical figures. It felt very serialized. It still had Joe Abercrombie's signature touch on it. His good writing, his good setting of a scene, good humor at points. Joe, at points. I've watched a lot of Joe Abercrombie interviews. One of the funniest guys out there. This felt very serialized. I felt like I was just reading skits from sitcoms I've watched before. So every scene, I felt like I already saw the joke that was coming, the punchline that was going to be there, and I felt like I already read this scene before. And a lot of the humor missed. There were some still moments where I would laugh out loud funny. But it felt like I was reading a sitcom of a book. And when you know what Joe's potential is, and he's going for something different here, he's trying to reach a different audience, he's trying to write a book that you can pick up this series at any book, where it's just little standalone adventures that our Suicide Squad is going on. And he did that well, but I just felt like there was no stakes in this book. There's no bigger story that I was hooked to. Yes, we're on a quest in this book, but it was meandering through this quest. It was going slow. We're just constantly jumping from one character's head to another and making scenes just draw out forever and ever and ever. So I put this one down halfway through. I love you, Joe. This one wasn't for me, but you put out another book, not in this world, I'll read it. Okay, then lastly, before we get to the romantasy books, The Lies of Locke Lamora by Scott Lynch, book 1 of the Gentleman Bastards series. I believe there's 3 books out of a planned 7, but there hasn't been any books released in a while. So this is one of those ones like A Song of Ice and Fire and Killer Chronicles where we're not sure if it's going to be finished. And that doesn't really bother me, as it's in this list of videos. It didn't work for me that well. Now, We're in a Venice-like setting in a fantasy world. Very low fantasy book. It's very much a heist book following non-magical characters, but there are a few magical people that we see throughout the book at just a few minor points. But this is a heist story. We jump in, we're following Locke Lamora as an adult, and between every chapter, we get a interlude flashback of Locke in his younger life, and we're seeing Locke go through a heist, getting caught up in something bigger, and it turns into a big epic heist story by the end of it. And that story by itself, it's fun. There are a lot of drawbacks on that heist story that I'll go into in a second, but the high points, easy to read. At some points, there's some good character dialogue. I wouldn't say it's great all the way through. There are some fun, cheeky moments. There are some cool moments of setup throughout the book where we get nice payoff. Probably a few too many though, we'll go into that in a second. And it's just a quick action story that you can read pretty quickly. But between every chapter, we get the flashback of Locke's younger life. And every single chapter, every single interlude chapter is just setting up the next chapter in the main book where, oh, here's Locke learning this thing, here's Locke doing this thing. So it's very predictable of what's going to happen in the next chapter because, oh, Locke's just learned how to do this. He's going to do this to get out of this event. And he's a very lucky man. Like, his heists that he is performing should have fallen through and failed so many times. Like, he gets caught, but villain monologues for way too long, buys Locke enough time. He can get free or do this thing and come through and end up okay in the end. So it just felt like he was just trying to get too much payoff every chapter. It's like, oh, here's this setup, payoff, setup, paid off, setup, paid off. And it just, led for a bit of a predictable read. Some of the jokes just didn't land for me. So this is a series I won't be continuing for those reasons. But if you want a fun, heisty story, it's a good time. It does that well. Cool fantasy setting. There's some interesting sharks and spiders and, fancy creatures in there, but nothing crazy, nothing super fancy out there. It's just a easy, fun reading experience. That wasn't 100% for me. It's fun to kind of just check out some series that are popular, even though they're not for you. I read ACOTAR, I read Fourth Wing, kind of just as experimental reads. Didn't know much about ACOTAR when I read it. I was just living my life reading fantasy books, and my sister's like, I need some help reading this book. Can you read it with me? I didn't know it was a smutty book. I just started reading it and binged through them all. And my sister finished reading like halfway through book 3 when it came to ACOTAR. But at that stage, I would just read one series at a time and blast through it. So I read ACOTAR in a month. How to describe? Sarah J. Maas. I find her writing style similar to Brandon. World building wise, it's magical. She sets a magical setting, which is kind of like the purpose. It's like the purpose of ACOTAR isn't plot. It's just the characters and the romance. It's not her plot focused series. If you're wanting plot by SJM, I hear you have to read Throne of Glass, and ACOTAR is just purely focused on the romance side of things. So it's very easy to read. Very plain writing style. Characters, easy to follow. Our main character, Feyre, she likes to go and do stuff. She takes action in her life and goes and does stuff, which is, easy to follow, easy to cheer for. Surrounding cast, there's always a fun dynamic between the characters. And the romance was pretty good. Plot-wise, no plot. Absolutely awful. There is like a big epic fantasy story going on in the background behind all this romance, and it was god awful for plot work. Just zero setup for big things that come through. Just events that just like out of nowhere, someone comes in and save the day, and there's no reason why they'd be coming through and saving the day. And it's just designed to have moments for the couple to go through. So I can see why it's as popular as it is, because the characters are built up to be, very dreamy, very romantic and stuff like that. But not the sort of thing I'd pick up to read. And then Fourth Wing, This is a hate read from like the second chapter. It's only a term I can use for Fourth Wing. There's no other time I've read a book where I've just despised it that much and just finished it just because I just hated someone or just wanted to see their downfall. Unfortunately, they didn't. I despise the main character in Fourth Wing. She constantly talks about how smart she is and then proceeds to never do anything smart in the entirety of the series. Completely blind. We can see things set up like very easily. Oh, this person saves her. This person saves her again and again and again. And she just keeps asking this person, why do you hate me? Why do you hate me? Clearly he doesn't. So the main character, just terrible. She's frustrating. She's a horrible person. She's super dumb. She thinks she's smart. The world building and the writing, the author throws in so many modern terms that just take you out of this world. And it's like, why would this thing be in this world? And she has they have like a full-on setup, like a gym setup in a fantasy setting where our main character is just like you doing a leg press. I'm like, what is going on here? It's putting this politely. I can see why so many people that don't read very often enjoy this series because, well, you can get into it very easily because its setting isn't as fantastical. There's a lot more elements based closer to our real world where you don't have to use your imagination as much, and it's just designed to be easy to read. But I just can't stand it. I thought the writing was awful. I thought the character was awful. There's dragons. Dragons are cool. I have to get off this topic. I need to have a break. Let me know down in the comments what series loved by most people don't work for you. Let me know why all my takes have been awful today. I'm sure there'll be plenty of disagreements. Just argue with me in the comments. Go for it. Have a great day. Thank you so much for watching. See ya.